Good evening everyone, welcome back to my channel, True Crime with Jess Rose. We're going to have a problem tonight. If you've been watching my videos from the beginning, one, you'd have noticed that my chin's got bigger. Quarantine has not been good to me. So hopefully we can get rid of that soon. Anyway, I got a new setup for my birthday and it's easy. It holds the camera, it's got that ring light. It's amazing. But the glasses, that's all I can see, and I can't kind of duck out of the way of it. It doesn't show you that on the adverts, doesn't it? You've got these girls just like, oh my God, I can take amazing selfies. Not if you've got glasses, not if you've got a chinzer. So anyway, you're going to have to bear with me because I do need to wear my glasses. So, yes, shout out to Hannah. Bless her. I was supposed to put this story up last night, and my Wi-Fi is a nightmare. Won't bore you with it. I've bored you many times with it, so we won't go into it. But yeah, hi Hannah, hope you're okay. Tonight I want to look at, I've done Kids Who Kill. Tonight I want to look at, it's great, isn't it? Britain's Killer Kids, and this is a show where the not narrator, presenter, is Joe Frost. You might know that name. It's Super Nanny. Wasn't a massive fan of Super Nanny. I've got it. The show itself, I thought she was very good. I just wasn't. I just wasn't a fan. But she's very good in this. She's really good. And yeah, what she the outcome of these shows is she wants to know, are these children a product of nature or nurture? Basically, were they born not with a screw loose as such, but not programmed right, or is a product of their environment? And the story she done this week was on a lad called Daniel Bartlam. Now, Daniel's lived in Nottingham with his parents, and they had a really nice middle-class life. He went to a private school, lovely house, you know, lovely family. His parents went on to have another little boy, so he had this brother, and everything was going well for Daniel until he got to 9. And his parents broke up. Now, it doesn't go into why it was such a drastic change to him, but it was because obviously him and his brother stayed with his mum. His brother's name's not mentioned in the show. They stayed with the mum, but they ended up having to move to downscale their home. He had to go to state school. And this was at the age of 9, so it's junior school. So it said that possibly it could have been the butt of some jokes, maybe some bullying going on. You know, you've got this, I suppose, posh lad going to a state school halfway through juniors. You know, if any of you have had to be the new kid at school, I have a couple of times, and you get that initial curiosity from all the kids, and then they all kind of go back to their normal groups, and then you're left to kind of find what clique you fit in with. And it was said that Daniel didn't actually find his clique. You know, he didn't really fit in with anyone. I suppose having things in common with the kids from that school, I don't know. But it says that that's a possible thing that could have happened. It's not said that it was, but it just said that he might have been. Now, Daniel didn't take any of this very well at all. And rather than, you know, fixing up, realising the situation, she is only 9. But, you know, you hear so often kids adapt. And Daniel just wasn't one for adapting. And he started to isolate himself over the next few years. He was very introverted, spent a lot of time in his room. He was on games a lot, video games, And during this time, his mum met a fella called Simon Matters. Now, Daniel's mum was called Jackie Bartlam, and she met Simon Matters, and they just got on really, really well. You know, she was trying to move on with her life, trying to find happiness, and yeah, Daniel wasn't happy about this at all. He's starting to get to his pre-teens now. He's, you know, getting to 12. He doesn't want his mum with anyone. I don't think he was jealous. They don't know, but he just wasn't happy about the whole situation. And as the relationship with Simon got more serious, Jackie wanted to, well, that as a joint decision, they wanted to sell. Both had homes. They wanted to sell them to set up a home together. And it's not mentioned that Simon had children, so it would have just been basically Jackie, the boys, and him moving into a new house, and it never happened because Daniel wouldn't have it. And rather than putting your foot down and saying this is what's happening, explaining it as best you can, but, you know, making sure you're not his friend. You know, he can't rule the house, the home like an adult. They just didn't follow through with that plan. And it's sort of giving you an inkling of this child just starting to get this, I suppose, power and sense of entitlement. I suppose maybe she felt guilty for the life that he'd lost, essentially. And he felt she owed him. You know, this is kind of how he was behaving, and he's still getting more reclusive. He's spending a lot of time in his room. I mean, Simon did stop over at the house, and he said you rarely saw him. He ate in his room. You know, he just didn't socialise. He'd go to school, he'd come back. That was it. And yeah, it was just constant video games. And at this point, Joe Frost is talking to, you know, a lot of experts in this field and saying, you know, what effect would this have had on a child that's already isolated themselves. It's already obviously very down on a situation that was out of their control. You know, what effect would this have had on him? Watching violent video games, watching violent films, you know, hidden away in his room, not in a communal space. And it said it would have had a really bad effect on him, you know, blurring the lines of fantasy and reality. You know, and he was just very angry. He was always angry. You know, on the show you hear a lot from Simon because he was there. His brother's not mentioned, like I say, at all. I didn't actually look further into his brother, but, you know, he's not mentioned on the show, so I'm assuming he's been taken out of the situation fully. So it's just Simon talking, and he just says, yeah, Daniel was very angry at his mum. Very, very angry at everything. If he couldn't have trainers he wanted, if he couldn't have games he wanted, you know. And Simon says that Jackie was the type that she just wanted to keep the peace. You know, she wasn't exactly, she didn't, the discipline maybe wasn't there. You know, you shouldn't allow, you know, I came from a very strict upbringing, you know, and I wouldn't have dreamt of screaming if I couldn't have trainers. And so for me, it's quite hard when I see that, watch these stories and talk about them, of these children just rolling a house. It's crazy to me. Although I've possibly got that coming in my future. Anyone who knows me, one of my children, yeah, I think I could have, you know, that kind of fight for ruling the house in the future. But anyway, I don't understand it yet. Yeah, he was very IT savvy though. As you'd imagine, if he's on his computer a lot and on video games, very IT savvy. He would help people fix things and stuff. There wasn't a lot said about his personality. I don't think there was a lot to Daniel. He was that introverted. There's not a lot said about him, even in his earlier years. There's nothing saying that he was a cute boy or, you know, he's a little sweetheart in his early years. There's nothing to suggest that, which is really unusual with these stories. You know, there's always something from their past that's brought up, whether they were sweet or they were neglected or something. You know, there's not a lot that's mentioned about Daniel pre 9 years old, and 9-year-old Daniel's only really mentioned because that's when his parents get divorced. So I think it was a very not a lot going on. But what Daniel became fascinated with, believe it or not, wasn't video games, violent video games or films. It was a scene in, a storyline in Coronation Street, believe it or not, Coronation Street. And it was said that a certain storyline in that show was caught his attention, and I will explain why. Now they do move again, the family, and Simon does move with them, and this is when Daniel turned 14. And at this point, Daniel really starts playing up, and it's questioned now: is he he's crying out for attention, crying out for help, sorry, or is this just about attention? But he started, whether it was going to the toilet and wiping himself with towels, or he was actually just going to the toilet in the towels and hiding them under the bed. Really bizarre behaviour. Stealing his mum's underwear and putting it under the bed. And it said that it wasn't in a, I suppose you could say, weird way. He wasn't like sniffing his mum's pants or anything, sorry. It was said that it was just to annoy her. Basically, that was it. He wanted to be as odd and attention-seeking as humanly possible, you know, and he didn't care how he got it. But even the teachers at school had started to notice that, you know, he was a bit strange. He used to say his tie was actually strangling him, like as a separate entity was trying to strangle him. You know, quite odd behaviour had started to be recognised at this point. You know, he's in senior school. 14, what would you be? Year 9? Yeah, he's not going the right way, he's Daniel. Well, over Easter 2011, like I say, he was just obsessed with violence. It was just everything. He wrote stories, he was a creative writer, everything was violent. And his mum was the main focus for his anger. It's still not known why she made him so angry. You know, did he blame her for the divorce? Did he blame her for him not having the life that he had? Where's the dad? Like, the dad doesn't get mentioned at all. But on Tuesday, the 26th of April, 2011, neighbours woke to a house fire at Daniel's home. Now, the firemen are called, obviously, straight away. Police follow and reporters follow. You know, it's quite a small town in Nottingham, a village. I mean, it was a nice house as well. You see it. You know, it's not like he ended up on a council estate somewhere. He was in a nice little, I'd say it was a village town. It looked very pleasant. And what it was said when they got there, the reporters, it was said that this house was on fire, but Daniel Bartlam, 14-year-old boy, managed to save his brother and the family dog, but his mother had perished. And, you know, he was kind of, for a very short time only, seen as like a hero, saving his brother, you know, and the dog. You know, don't get me wrong, don't come at me, animal lovers. You know, I love animals myself, but it was just, you know, he was like, look at me, saviour, Daniel. And it didn't last long, though. It didn't last long. When they got into the house, the firemen were like, they got to Jackie's bedroom, and they could see that an accelerant had been put round her and just in her bedroom. And when Daniel was questioned, he said that he'd woken up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet, walked into the hall, and there was a masked man there who panicked, threw a hammer at Daniel and ran. He said next thing you know, he looked to his mum's bedroom, which was really badly on fire, and he felt he couldn't save her, but he could save his brother and the dog, and he got out. And this was the story he was giving. Now, Simon, who'd been working away, like I say, Simon was living there, but he worked away a lot of the time, and he was called, and, you know, he come back, and he kind of said from the beginning he felt there was something not right, given everything that had been going on and all the rowing and, you know, this escalation of things going on with them at home. He just thought, you know, he's devastated, his partner's dead. And in the back of his mind, he's thinking that this wasn't, you know, an intruder. Something's wrong here. And, you know, it didn't take the police long to come to that conclusion as well. You know, they just didn't, it didn't work. It didn't tie up. The evidence wasn't there. Now, 2 hammers were found at the crime scene, a claw hammer and a lump hammer. And while they're there, like I say, the majority of the smoke damage and the fire was concentrated in Jackie's bedroom. Now, Jackie obviously died in this fire, this poor lady, and when they take her to the autopsy, they realised, you know, there's a lot of injuries that are predating the fire. You know how they can put it all together and stuff. And after a few weeks, Daniel finally admits what actually happened to his mum that night. His mum, remember. Takes him a couple of weeks to do it though, even though, like I say, because the fire was concentrated in her bedroom, they found a script. Now, like I say, Daniel had become fascinated with a storyline in Coronation Street, and it was a character by the name of Stape, and he killed somebody with a hammer. I didn't watch it. I'm not too sure of that. I stopped watching Coronation Street years ago. But he was fascinated with this character, and he'd written a script literally to everything he'd done. Where he killed his mom. He was the perfect male dad. He killed his mom with a hammer, and he came out the hero. Can I just go back again? He's 14 years old. He's 14. And finally, after a couple of weeks, he admits what had happened. And he'd fought with his mom earlier on in the day over trainers, whether he couldn't have the pair he wanted. It's not fully sure what the exact thought was about. That's what he said. And he decided that tonight was the night. And he waited till 1 o'clock in the morning, stormed into her room. Now, he didn't do it while she was asleep. He woke her up. He woke his mum up. So she'd have been fully aware of what her son was doing to her. And he hit her many, many, many times with the claw hammer about her head and her face. And then he set her on fire. That's his mum. And it was premeditated. He'd wrote the script for killing his mum. Now Simon, because he was there, you know, he'd been in his life for, it was at least 3-4 years by that point. He did say, had Daniel maybe gotten the help, because his behaviour wasn't right, maybe it could have been prevented. There's nothing to say it would be. And there's, you know, when you watch this show, there's a lot of what if, you know, was it because of this, was it because of that? What they said was very unusual with this case. In where the killers are children, it's usually they've got a history of being neglected or abused. You know, there's some neglected or physically abused. You know, there's some sort of abuse that has gone on in their past. Some, you know, something really traumatising has happened to these children. Kim Edwards, she killed her mum. She was 14. Her and her boyfriend were Britain's first child double killers, double murderers. Have done the story. And, you know, Kim, for as pants as the motive is, her mum didn't want her with her boyfriend, and her mum had physically abused Kim as a child. You know, there was that kind of flimsy, albeit, but motive. You know, but Daniel, no. Other than the fact his parents got divorced, that was it. That was all they could revert back to. He'd never suffered with any abuse. He, you know, he'd never gone hungry or neglected, or, you know, there was nothing in that. You know, there was no sexual abuse. There was nothing they could look back to and be like, God, what is this? You know, a society brought this on, or is this lad, you know, like I said at the beginning, is it nature? But they did many mental health screenings and tests on Daniel, and it never showed that there was anything wrong with him. Obviously a sociopath, narcissistic, all those words that you can throw out there, but I think what they were trying to prove is it something that with medication and, you know, maybe rehabilitation, that could be looked at and he could get help, or because they say repeat those people like that where it's a mental illness, they can't help what they've done. You know, they don't know right from wrong at the time. The reality and fantasy gets blurred, and, you know, that's what they say for those people. Daniel, no. Even with the video games, even with the violent movies, mentally, as in a mental illness that could be treated, no, there was nothing wrong with the lad. He was just, he knew what he was doing. He just didn't care. He didn't care. He hated her for nothing. It said that he wanted to be famous. You know, we do a lot of these stories where notoriety is at the base of why they've done this, to see what it's like. It's beyond what you, at least when you think this is something that they've had from birth, and, you know, they don't know what they're doing. You know, as much hard as that is to get your head around, it's like, maybe they could get some help. But him, I mean, there's nothing to explain what he did. That was his mum. On January the 23rd, 2012, so a year later, the trial starts. Now, what I didn't mention was he pled not guilty. He said he was provoked. Even with all the evidence the prosecution had, you know, not guilty. He wanted to go through a trial. This is the narcissistic thing in him, and, you know, him wanting to get his 10 minutes of fame, 15 minutes of fame, whatever they call it. So the prosecution had to prove the premeditation, and obviously they had the script, you know, the hammer that was thrown in to try and throw a red herring into it, it said. He was very, they said, meek while he was in the dock, you know, looking down, and, you know, although Simon did say he could see him looking between his fingers, you know, he showed his age a lot at times. But then when he was on the stand, it said that he got really cocky. You know, he was answering the prosecution back. He didn't care. This lad's 14 years old. And at one point, you know, they asked Simon, did you catch his eye? Did he look at you? And he says, yeah, when he looked at me, he did this. I mean, you know, I think that says to me, had Simon been home and not at work, would he have gone as well? Would he have been another victim? Just, you know, he never cried. He never showed any remorse. There's no empathy in him. He's missing those things you need to live in society. You know, he's not got those things. He doesn't care. He didn't care that he killed his mum, the woman who brought him into this world. He didn't care. And on April the 2nd, 2012, thank goodness he was found guilty. He was sentenced to life with a minimum of 16 years. And yeah, if you do it really quick, he'll be out by the time he's 30. 30 years of age. Go on about his life. You know, it's said that they will try rehabilitation and you know, etc. with Daniel, but the experts do say they don't hold out much hope because of the fact that there isn't a mental illness that can be treated, you know, that with medication, with talking and, you know, getting things out there, that it's just he hasn't got that empathy and, you know, that caring thing you need to not survive, but to live within normal society and get on with people, and he just hasn't got that. You know, and Simon does say if anything was to happen to Daniel in prison, because it said that, you know, as cocky as he was at the trial, he's still a very insecure lad. You know, they said he probably would be a victim of bullying within the prison system. Shame. You know, it's just, it's crazy to me that someone who would get bullied by people outside, which may or may not have happened to him at school, he took that out on the one person who would have helped him, who could have helped him, who could have gone to the school and helped, or took him out of school and put him into another school, if that was the case. But all the other contributing factors that they usually look at with children who kill, none of them were in play with Daniel. None of them. You know, what the normal tick boxes they would give to the build-up of it, the escalation of it, none of that was there. Kim Edwards, they could see. You know, they could see how that happened, but Daniel, on paper, no. He's just one of life's, not right, a little bit like Brett Bednar. Very good IT and, you know, intelligence, but no social skills. You know, doesn't get on in society. And just preys on, you know, just innocent people who wouldn't hurt them. It's just crazy to me. But yeah, that show, if you do want to watch it, is very interesting. The last one I did like this was Kids Who Kill. This one, which was obviously the Alicia, oh, I do apologise, Alicia McPhail. That was an awful story. That was Kids Who Kill. Well, this is Britain's Killer Kids. Like I say, it's with Jo Frost. And she's actually very good. She's really good. I think she tries to look on the side of the child as, or, you know, from every angle, trying to see, you know, how this could possibly happen, because she sees the good in every child. Like, you know, she believes that, you know, none of them are beyond help. But I think even she was, you know, in the show, like, I don't know about this one. You know, she just, every excuse that she could possibly give couldn't be given. Very interesting show, though. It is really good if you want to have a look. But yeah, thank you for joining me again. That was the story of Daniel Bartlam. And I'm sorry about the chin. I'd like to blame the light, but it's genuinely not. Maybe I need to sit a little bit more upwards. Quarantine has not been good to me, people. Let me know if I'm not the only one. I'd like to hear. Or if you've got, thank you to my new subscribers, by the way. If you've got any comments, please drop them in. I'd really appreciate it. And a like, and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. And I'll be back soon. Thank you so much. And hopefully I'll have this reflection thing sorted. I hope it hasn't been too off-putting. And yeah, I'll see you all soon. Take care. Thank you.